So there is lots of wisdom just to learn from the process of Solomon's life. So Solomon, apparently, according to extra-biblical myths, so this isn't in the Bible, but according to the Hebrew myths, Solomon wrote a song for every wife that he married.
Oh, wow.
He wrote each one of them a nice, poem when he got married to them.
Charming.
Okay, so, so 900 and something songs. Maybe. But this is the Song of Songs. Now that is Hebrew language for the best song.
Top of the head.
Okay? Hebrew uses reduplication to have to create what we would call
amplification.
Measures of comparison.
Yeah.
So we would have good, better, best, fast, faster, fastest. You don't have that in Hebrew. Okay? You will say he ran with the running, meaning he ran really fast. You see, I'm using the verb again. Then I'm creating the extreme form. Okay? He is a talker of the talkers. Okay? Means he is.
Check the box.
He's the best talker. That's how you create that bit. So this is the Song of Songs. Meaning it's the best song. So whether or not Solomon wrote almost 1,000 songs, I don't know. But this is his best song. So this is his best love song. If you read the Proverbs that were collected under Solomon, he talks about plants and animals. Okay, so the imagery, there's a lot of nature imagery in here. So it makes sense to me that it could be Solomon. Also, he mentions different places. The book of Solomon mentions different places. Some of the places are in southern Lebanon. Some of the places are in different areas in Israel, all the way through to the border of Egypt. There was only one time when the kingdom stretched through that entire time, and that was under David and under Solomon. So it doesn't make sense that it could be in a different era. And this was a time of great prosperity. You can see that from how it's described. So I think it was Solomon that wrote this. Now, there's three ways that we have interpreted this. Some people say it's a made-up story about Solomon and the Shunammite. Okay? So it's fiction. Yeah, it's fiction. That was written later about Solomon and this woman. Okay? That's one version. The other version is, this is an allegory, meaning it's a story with a deeper meaning. The story isn't real, but it has a deep spiritual meaning.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is how it's usually being preached. So Solomon, or the bridegroom, the bridegroom, that's Jesus. And this woman, the Shunammite, that is the church. Okay? And this is the story of the love between the church and Christ.
Yeah.
Okay, so for some of the stuff, I think I'm not spiritual enough. Okay? Because Solomon talks about, or the bridegroom talks about her breasts. And he describes her breasts and how they're exactly alike. Okay? And then it says, in between your breasts. And then some of the interpreters will say, oh, that's in between the Old and the New Testament. And I'm like, I'm not spiritual. I'm not spiritual enough. That's not what I see. Okay, when he describes her two breasts as two lambs that come up from the shear, and I'm like,
but there are parts of it that make sense.
yeah. So in some instances,
not kind of like a hybrid of deep meanings.
And then some of the stuff he says, you're so beautiful. Now he describes her face. He your nose is like an ivory tower of Lebanon. I'm like, wow, she had a schnauzer. Okay. But now, what is this? So now my question is, cool. Okay, so what is the spiritual significance of the church having a nose like the Tower of Lebanon? I'm like, I'm looking for the spiritual meaning. I'm trying, or
the bell tower.
or the inside of your mouth, he tells her. The inside of your mouth tastes like honey and wine. Hey, these guys French kissed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but okay, so I'm trying to.
Honey and wine.
Yeah, so it's like.
Maybe she just had money.
So I'm trying to figure out, what's the spiritual meaning here. I'm struggling.
Honey could mean, wine means something.
Okay, so and what's with all the pomegranates and the a lot of this is imagery about sex.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I'm not saying the whole book is about sex.
Yeah.
But if you can't see that some part of this book is about sex, you've got a problem. Okay? Do you think sex is dirty? Why do you want to allegorize anything in the Bible that could possibly talk about sex? Because you have been taught that sex is dirty and bad.
Yeah.
Okay. But who made sex? Adam and Eve had sex in the garden before the fall.
Yeah.
It's not a dirty, bad thing if it is within the boundaries where God put it.
Yeah.
God put it inside marriage. So why are we so scared of the topic? Because if we can't talk about sex, people will find out about sex somewhere else. And it will be dirty and perverted and wrong. Now, are there things that I can see in the book of Solomon that I can apply to the church and to Christ? Yes, I can. Okay? The New Testament tells us, Paul in his letter to the Ephesians tells us that he is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. And a husband and wife should reflect the relationship between Christ and the church in their relationship. Okay? But he says, but I speak a great mystery. Okay? This thing is complicated. Alright? Marriage is complicated. Love between a man and a woman is complicated. The love between the church and Christ is complicated. It's a deep thing. It's a mystery, right?
Yeah.
So can I apply some of these principles to the church and to Christ? Can I talk about worship? Can I talk about, yes, but long before I talk about the church and Christ, I need to talk about husbands and wives. Because I'll tell you what, he knew how to talk to her.
Yeah.
And she knew how to talk to him. Okay? It's both directions. Long before we talk about Christ and the church, let's talk about husbands and wives. Do you still speak sweet nothings to one another after you've been married for 60 years? Okay? Or is it if? There's this old story about this guy and this girl. They get married, they have this little Toyota bucket. And one of those, you remember those small ones, right? And they're driving along, and decades later, they'll be married 30 years. She's sitting over here by the window and she says, when we dated, we would sit close to one another when we were in the bucket.
And the bench.
Yeah, you would sit so tight close to me, but now I don't He's just driving along, he says, honey, I haven't moved. Right? You know, he's still in the same place, right? But she's angry with him that he's not holding her tight, but she's sitting way over there against the window. Okay? Honey, I haven't moved. Okay? We need both directions. We need to be able to still talk to each other nice. And not just about the kids and work and what we're going to do with the finances and what's for dinner. Okay? You know, we need to know how to talk to one another. There's some good advice in here, people. There's some stuff that if you start doing this, please don't tell your wife you have a nose like the tower. Okay? Maybe that was a compliment back then. Okay. You know, maybe that was a compliment back then, but just get the spirit of the thing. Okay. Now, some people try to construct a story out of the thing. They try to see a storyline of, you know, I've heard the storyline told, you know, there's this shepherd girl up in the north, and she meets this guy, but she doesn't know who he is, but you know, she's burnt dark from the sun, and this guy says, I'm going to come and fetch you, and he arranges with her dad, and he's going to marry her. And then she finds out, here comes this person. Oh, it's the king. Solomon was actually on holiday in the north, you see, and then he met her. And then he comes and takes her, but now she's all shy because, you know, she's different from the city girls in Jerusalem. And they build this whole narrative. Maybe. To me, a lot of that stuff is a stretch. So I'm very careful with allegory. Trying to allegorize something in scripture, you need to be very, very careful. Right? Unless the text says it's an allegory, don't use it as an allegory. Unless the text tells you this is picture language that can be applied to something else, don't use it as picture language to apply to something else. Simply because you can end up with some really weird, wacky teachings. Right? So those are just the safety barriers. I just want to put up the safety barriers. Because I can get something really useful. I can actually get a lot of useful stuff out of Song of Solomon without allegorizing it. Okay? Number one, God honors love between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
God's even excited enough about it to have parts of this book talk about sex.
Yeah.
Sex is not dirty and disgusting, okay? It's a gift from God, right? It's something good, okay? If it's within marriage, something beautiful about that. Husbands and wives need to know how to talk to one another. Okay? It's important. And you actually see that process. It's 6 separate songs that if you want to combine them into one story, you can. But you'll see that the songs are, once again, the chapter divisions are in bad places. So I've given you some of the chapter divisions, okay, so that you can sort of read it as a song on its own. What is this part about? So the first song, there from chapter 1 into halfway into chapter 2, is about love beginning. Like, how do you feel when you just fall in love? Right? There's this, how does love begin? And how should we think about it, right? There's some beautiful stuff in there. You know, do not awaken love until it so desires. You know, it's the last verse actually in the song. If you look at chapter 2, verse 7. Young women of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and wild does of the field. Do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time. There's some good advice there, right? If you can over-sexualize your children, and you can set them up to be sexually aware way before the time when it's appropriate, Okay? And if somebody isn't engaged to be married yet, there's some stuff that you shouldn't be around, or situations that you shouldn't be around, because we're all flesh.
God says run.
Okay? So there is a certain level of intimacy that isn't appropriate until you're married.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't start the engine too early. Okay? This is really practical advice.
My father always used to say, vroeg.
Vroeg, right? You know, there's an Afrikaans proverb.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's that first song. The second song is The King Fetches His Bride. Okay? This is this idea of wooing and actually realizing who it is that you're in love with, right? And she talks about him and he talks about her. Right? It's interesting to me that he is described as handsome and all this. Actually, it's more language about the fact that he is a person of power. Okay? When they describe her, yes, he talks about the fact that she's, humble and whatever, but it talks about the physical beauty a lot more than it really talks about his physical beauty, right? There are men and women who need to be complemented in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's just be smart about it as well.
That's why
There's good stuff in
honor
there.
your husband.
Yeah.
Which means you respect your husband.
Yeah. You honor the strength and the power and the authority that God has put in you, right? Now, doesn't mean you need to disrespect your wife. It just means, that's not as big a deal to her. And there's different things that are important to her, and she wants to be recognized as an individual and special, and you're special, you're beautiful, and you're loved and you're appreciated. Okay, it's a different set of things that are higher in the priority list. It's smart, isn't it? It's actually quite beautiful. Right? So there are two songs in here that talks about her fears. Okay? The dream that she had, that she heard his voice and she came up to the door and she opened up and where is he? Okay? And I think, for men, this is a major revelation. Like, okay, we have our own sets of insecurities when it comes to romance, okay? But most men don't realize how much time and brain space relationships take in a woman's mind. Men also need relationships, but it's a biological fact that men actually have an lobotomy when we're about 3.5. Okay? Now I'm serious. When we're about 3.5, chemicals are released into a boy's body. Okay? And it actually separates the septum. It actually makes the bridge between the two halves of the brain, it actually makes it smaller for a while. Okay? And that's why men are better at, we're not the only ones that can do it, but we seem to be better at focus tasks. Okay? Men tend to zone out easier. Have you seen this with your husband?
Nothing box.
Okay? We zone out. I'm busy with this thing. And when I start with this thing, everything, like there can be explosions and stuff like that. I'm here. Like, honey, what about this and so? Yeah,
Yes.
Okay?
Automatic response.
Okay, it's like this. What's happening? Okay, we're focusing. That means that, but we can do that with relationships as well. Okay, we can zone out and just focus on this thing. Okay, women aren't like that. Alright, so now it means that she's thinking about everything in terms of relationships. I think about relationships and I think about work and I think about, because she's thinking about everything in terms of relationships. We don't realize how important relationships are. The guy's taking her out on the first date, they're coming back from the date. Maybe they've been dating a while, right? They're heading towards marriage or whatever. He's driving along. She looks at him. She thinks, he looks unhappy. I wonder if it's something that I said. Did he not enjoy our conversation over dinner? Is he having doubts about our relationship? Okay, this is what's in her speech bubble, her thought bubble. That's what's in her thought. Now what's in his thought bubble? I haven't heard that sort of sound in the engine before. I really should take it for a service. I wonder if I can do the service myself.
It's actually true.
That's exactly what's okay. So gentlemen, your relationship with your wife occupies a larger part of her thought world than she occupies in your thought world. Ladies, it's not that he doesn't love you. He's just a man. Okay? If you want to be married to a man, accept that's what you're getting. Okay? But it is what gives a man the ability to focus on certain things, to be task driven, be accomplishment driven. Okay, it's part of the gift that God, that's how God made you. And God has made you to be strong in relationships. It's a good thing, it's a great thing. Gentlemen, celebrate it about your wife, alright? But just accept it. So that's why about a third of this book is actually about her insecurities and how to address it. It doesn't make women weird or wrong, it just makes them different.
For a reason.
Okay? And accept that. Right? She needs more assurance than what you think. You'll do well to give her more assurance. And it's like the story of, I don't know if you still love me. Honey, when we got married, I said I love you from death do us part. If anything changes, I'll let you know. It's a bad idea. It's not. But she needs more assurance than that. All right. So, and talk about the consummation of love. Right? Things need to go somewhere. We need to have the consummation. And then they talk about journeys, journeying to different places. You know, she wants to go home, but they need to come back to the city, and when are they coming up? Okay. So when you get married, it's not the end of the journey.
That's for sure.
You started. Okay? And as your love matures and as you mature as people, you're going to face new things. Right? And that's the reality. It's and I think the important thing here is as you cannot turn the other person into your story. If you can just be married to a woman like that, then I'll have it made. Okay? And then you get married to her and then life goes on. You just have a guy like that. The journey is going to go on. Okay? You're going to want to go back to certain things, or you're going to want to go on to certain things. Okay? So how do you do this journey together? So there's some really useful stuff in there that I can get out of there without allegorizing. Now I can apply it. Just like I can apply these truths of their relationship to my relationship with my wife, in the same way I can apply those truths to the church's relationship with Christ. He's going to be the one that initiates. Right? But we as the church need to respond. It can't just be, oh, Jesus pursues us. Yes, he needs to pursue us, but we as the church need to respond. We need to know who it is that we as the church worship. We worship the great King. He's coming in power and glory, and he is a man of authority. All right, we can apply it in that sense, right? And he speaks to us so nicely. Despite our failings and despite our insecurities, we are the ones that always need to be reassured of his love. at some stage we need to respond and also tell him, but we love you enough to dedicate our lives to you, to make ourselves exclusively available to you. Okay, we can apply it. Okay? And we can learn how to worship and respond in love and grow in our relationship. All of this is good stuff. But don't get stuck on the allegory. Remember, we're applying a real life love story, a song, it's a poem. Okay? So there's going to be poetic license in there. We're applying that to something larger. But first, the first place where we need to apply it is in our own marriages, before we try to apply it to the church and to Jesus. Does that help you?
No.
So go and enjoy the book. Read the book through end to end. It's beautiful. I mean, a lot of it is delicately stated. Okay? So he's coming to her garden and he's enjoying the delights of the garden. Okay? It's poetic language for sex.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's delicately stated. It's fine. Okay? And you can enjoy it. And it's like, gee, this is X-rated. We need to not show this to kids.
This is, I mean, your sexual part of your relationship is important to God.
Yes.
I mean, why would he write a book about it?
Yeah. But it fits within a larger relationship. You know, it is true that some of the content of the book of Song of Solomon is about sex. But you also have to be pretty perverted to see only sex. Right? There's a lot more to the relationship than sex.
Wooing. There's a
You
lot
know?
of wooing.
Yes.
To woo her. And
So,
gently.
so, you know, as they say, this is the most powerful sexual organ, right? Is your brain. You know, because this is where intimacy starts, and then the sex is just a physical expression of that intimacy. And this is what makes fornication so dangerous. It's because it turns it around. It expects that through physical intimacy you're going to have emotional intimacy, and it never happens. You've short-circuited the system.
No, that's proven.
Okay, so that's why it's so dangerous.